Good deal. So, thank you all for coming. This is Hacking Giveaways, Contests, and Polls for Fun and Profit. I'm curious, before we start, have any of you guys done any sort of web automation before this? Anything from, I don't care, even some small web action, even as wget or something. Because if you haven't, I'm actually going to, in the very beginning here, give you a slight intro on how to do some web automation stuff. That way, this talk can feel a lot more practical, and you guys can actually be ready to do stuff after this talk. So, welcome. So, who am I? I'm Matthew Bryant, or mandatory. What do? I do a lot of web bot stuff. I really enjoy doing web bots. I like to automate almost anything I do on the web. I like to turn it into a script and make my life a lot easier with it, and make web bots to be humans and do all kinds of stuff. I also obviously love computer security because I'm here. And I'm also a contracted developer for underground computers and a computer science and computer engineering student at Western Michigan University. So, kind of an overview. Obviously, we're going to do the why and the how, but as far as we're going to go through all the different roadblocks that people would put up to protect their web service. And this doesn't necessarily mean just giveaways or polls in particular. This is pretty much any web service. So think Dropbox, they give you free storage. Think if you could link up a bunch of freeness, all their free, like whatever they give you in the beginning, 10 gigabytes, and you can make large storage with that. So this applies to about anything. And then after we review over the roadblocks, we're going to go right into it. We're going to show you just me actually evading these in real time, so you can really get a feeling for what you have to do. And then after that, we're going to show contests and polls and how to rig those and some historical poll rigging that's happened. And then at the very end, we're going to do prevention. So why am I giving this talk? It's very interesting to me that nobody's done anything on this topic before, because it seems like something that is really important and it happens all the time, but I've never seen anything like this. Giveaway and polls are not something that people put up and put a lot of effort into securing. It's really kind of the polls only be up for a week, or the giveaways only be up for a week. Let's just, kind of hack it together, just some pre-written code. I mean, it's usually pretty terrible. So it's a great place to do any sort of hacking because they're often not prepared for what you're ready to do. And disclaimer before we start, I just want to let everybody know that sometimes I might get confused and might speak as though I've actually done some of the things in this presentation, but that is definitely not the case. This is all hypothetical, educational purposes, whatever puts me in safe harbor. So, assume I'm really, really good at Photoshop for this presentation, because, it's the cool thing. So how? So this is kind of an intro to web automation. For sure, if you've never done anything before, it's actually a lot more simple just to do something like iMacros. This is literally a plugin that goes in your browser and lets you record web actions and play them back. So you don't even have to do any real coding, rather record what you're doing and play it back, and you can do loops and data input that way. So it's actually it's a lot easier just to go in entry level with web bots, whereas most people think it's very daunting. If you are a programmer and you want to have a lot more control, Watir is a free open source option, and that is in Ruby, and it's also a Firefox add-on that you just install, which is more complicated. So we'll primarily be using macros here. There's more, but these are probably the primary ones. So a quick demonstration, and I think this is important to show people here. If you look at this is just a short video of what I mean. So all you have to do is simply record, and this is just Firefox add-on. You start doing whatever you would normally do. So here I'm just going to do a little Google search for iMacros test demo. Click. Choose a result here. And I want to let you know that when I play this, I'm going to play it at the lowest speed possible with the program, but you can actually get it almost instantaneous. So no lag time at all between any of the actions. You see it's like slowly ticking through each operation. If you play it back at full speed, it's just instantaneous as fast as it can go. So it's much, much quicker. But see, even at the slowest setting, it's a lot faster than any human would ever be at doing this sort of thing. So that wasn't too complicated. I think everybody in here could install Firefox add-on, even if you've never done anything technical before, and just get rolling with this today. So if you are a programmer and you don't want to deal with the browser add-on because they're too bulky, whatever, there are other options. You could just do raw request analyzing and then write your own tool for it. I know curl is my preferred thing, where you can use that with PHP to do just about anything web automation related. but it's up to you. I have a book up there that I started out with and kind of got me into this whole idea of web automation. So you can definitely check out that book. It depends obviously on what your language is. If PHP isn't your cup of tea, and it isn't a lot of people's cup of tea, then do it in your language. Find out what your library is and go with it. But I want to also point out that it's not really as black and white as people think it is, because a lot of people think that the browser add-on stuff is just, some new, easy intro, whatever stuff. But if you're going to do something, sometimes browser level is better. And the reason for that being is if somebody is checking their logs, like they're grabbing their logs, and they want to find inconsistencies, what's going to be an inconsistency is when you have a web bot that grabs some pages and load JavaScript, CSS, images, all the external resources. So you better make sure you're doing that with your scripts. Your browser does that automatically. You don't even notice it when you load the web page. But if you're doing this on a script level, you have to be sure that your program's actually going out and grabbing all these things and make sure that there's no discrepancy in the logs that people would identify you as a bot. So if you're going to do like the low-level stuff, it's definitely better too because it's faster. You can throw it on our servers tomorrow and make it work really easily. And that's kind of where I'm at currently. I don't really do a lot of web browser stuff. I only do the low-level coding, but it's up to you. So what are the roadblocks? What do people usually put in place to stop people from using their web service? So here's kind of a list of things. Don't need to read it now. We're going to go through every single example. Email is definitely one of them. Pretty much every giveaway, poll, whatever, requires email as a basic form of validation where they'll send you an email which has a link that you usually have to click, and that's how they validate you. So how do we solve that? That one's incredibly straightforward, just because email is obviously there's a bunch of spam going on. So there are a bunch of services created initially just for spam. So they're temporary accounts. Basically, they're a website that's a catch-all. So any email that comes in, they automatically grab it, even if the account doesn't exist, and they throw it in its own little box, and then they wait for somebody to come by and pick it up. So I'm going to show mail catch here in 1 second. You see this right here. So you basically sign up with like test@mailcatch.com with your form, and then you don't even have to create anything on this website. You just sign up. It says email sent. Then you just head here, and you have the emails just sitting there for you. And obviously a lot of spam too, because apparently these people are really bad spammers. So captchas. This is something I'm sure all of you guys have seen in one way or another. It's these stupid words that are impossible to read, and sometimes upside down, and sometimes images of signs now because Google's doing that to identify road stuff. It's insane. It's basically a Turing test. So how do we get around these? These seem like often like the big block, like, oh crap, now I have to actually be there and enter these in. But it's really not the case at all. Google is currently the owners of GrrCON, which are the good ones. Those are the ones that you have to introduce a human somewhere in there because they are literally taken from real world things like books, and then you have to solve them that way. But other OCR, other like captchas, like WordPress captchas, a lot of them are easily breakable because they're generated by computers, so they can be broken by computers relatively easily. And you see captcha sniped down at the bottom is a tool that was basically designed for the spam community. And they advertise to spammers, which you're going to see a trend quite a bit with web automation for spam. But they do advanced OCRs. They have support for all kinds of captchas and stuff. So that's good software, but really the biggest one is for sure reCAPTCHA. And you might think that it'd be expensive to solve these, but it's unbelievably cheap to solve them. They have a service called, the most popular one for sure, at least as far as I've seen, is Death by CAPTCHA. And you see they have for as little as 5,000 for like $7. And how do they do that? Sort of unethically. They actually they don't specify on the website, but they have basically a room of Indian guys who sit at a computer all day with eyes bleeding, typing these things out, and then they send the words back to you. So like when you're using their service, you're sending a captcha to them, there's some guy on the other end who's solving these things, and then they get sent back to you when they're done. So incredibly cheap because their labor is cheap. So that's a strong option, and probably the best option. They've got API for just about anything you're running with. So this is something weird. On the reCAPTCHA FAQ page, which I don't think has been updated forever, they say, "Our CAPTCHA is secure." And I don't know, this leads to another point. If you don't want to pay, because I can tell you most hackers don't want their credit card on file when they're doing stuff like this. I'm sure you guys wouldn't. "Our CAPTCHA is secure." This is from the page. "I hear spammers are using porn sites to solve them. The captchas are sent to a porn site. The porn site users are asked to solve the captcha before being able to see a pornographic image." And that's very oddly specific. Like all the other questions were short little blurbs, and this is just a full description of it. So in my head I'm thinking, great idea. So you draw a website that has a lot of traffic, and maybe you want to farm your users for their human ability. Just put the captures that you want to solve on your webpage, and people will solve them correctly because they've been to this before and they're like, oh, if it's wrong, it's not going to work. So they're not going to put crap in there. So this apparently is a thing, even though in the response to this question they say, we've never seen it happen in the wild, but if it did happen, it probably would look like this. So that's a great solution, and it probably happens more than I've seen. So another good example of this happening too is the coop face malware, which is just the technical name for the Facebook worm, which was a big thing going around. I remember this. Some of my friends were getting hacked, and it was ridiculous. And they wanted to use their users to solve captures for them, so they basically very non-casually presented with a prompt that says, "Hey, we're going to shut your computer down in 3 minutes. Solve this thing. Go." And that was their solution to getting captures. So anybody seeing this is, I see this and I think, oh, this is Microsoft, but I guess the grandma's just like freaking out and then types this in, and this pops up every so often, so you're like, poor little granny instead of the Indian guy solving these for you. So I don't really like that. I wrote a proof of concept where I just did Comcast, because they've done stupid stuff like this, like injecting JavaScript into pages. So did like just a simple proof of concept that just pops up and says, hey, Comcast has detected automatic traffic, validate that you're human. So this is definitely an option. I'm sure this happens more than just the Facebook worm. But so yeah, if you are a hacker, you just utilize your current botnet to do this, or if you own a large traffic site, you can do the same. So one of the issues is for sure JavaScript and Ajax. You have a lot of issues when you're doing like low-level scripting and non-browser add-on stuff. So, it's a lot easier. You can definitely do it with low-level scripting, but if you're not experienced, just do the browser add-on stuff, because it can become quite complicated, especially with some of the new web, like 2.0 JavaScript stuff they do. It's too complicated for a beginner to try to replay all those and make it look legit. So just do usually my iMacros add-on is a lot better. Just if you have trouble, play iMacros at a lower speed, make sure everything loads, and they've got commands to help with this. But it's just a small hump that I'm sure you guys will go across at some point. So Flash, you probably remember it more like this actually. So like 3 times a day. So Flash is definitely something you'll encounter across the web. The issue is automating this thing is not like iMacros has kind of issues with it. But if you want to, if the whole website is in Flash, and I know for a fact that Pepsi, I think they were advertising Pepsi Max, and they did a whole web page that was just Flash. It's a pain in the butt to automate, because you have to do like XY coordinate clicking, and it's just horrifying. So Flash can often just be decompiled just like into a source, which is ActionScript or whatever, and that's all pretty straightforward to do. Or you can just analyze the requests in the background, because usually they're not being too complicated. Usually it's just a Flash app that does a bunch of pretty stuff, like a spin model of Pepsi, and then in the background when you register, it just sends like a post request to the server, and you can do that easily. So again, this is where iMacros kind of fails in some respect. You can do like image detection, so if it sees this image, then do this action. But this is where doing the scripting knowledge is actually a lot more helpful, because you'd be a lot more golden with that. Java, something I feel I should cover, even though you probably, hopefully, won't see this anymore on the web and giveaways, although for some reason people insist on doing Java applets for things. I don't know why. Especially when you're like supposed to disable JavaScript or Java, in your browser. So Java's the same way. You can literally decompile it into its source, or basically like its source with comments removed and a little bit of weirdness with it. But it's very straightforward. You can just read the source, just like any other Java programmer when you wrote it. And then you can see, oh, it does this. That's easy. I'll just redo that or modify it a little bit and you're golden. So that's pretty straightforward. Yeah, you probably won't see that as much. And this right here, I think, is the biggest issue that people run into for sure. Because, especially with IPv4, when they're running out of addresses or have run out, or are scrambling with the ones that they have. So IPs are definitely the hardest thing to get a bunch of. And so this has really been my pinpoint until more recently I found out some options. Sock proxies are the most popular. Basically, those are servers that have the ability to connect to them and use their internet for free, and just connect to a certain port and use you can use do HTTP over them. There's a lot of open sock proxies, and they basically scan the web and look for these things, and they have like sites that just have lists of sock proxies that you can use. iMacros has support for it, so you can just copy and paste, do it really simple with iMacros. VPN, some VPNs, every time you disconnect and then reconnect, you get a new outward-facing public IP address, which is great. So if you really want to piss off the company that you're VPNing with, you could do this for sure. Tor network, I would advise against of using the Tor network because obviously it's a really important project, but they have a lot of exit nodes, so you could for sure use that. And I see a lot of hackers just end up using Tor because it's an easy option. You unfortunately have things like it's incredibly slow. People on the exit nodes are probably sniffing your traffic, so when sending anything sensitive, unless you're using SSL or something. SSH tunneling, we got a lot of servers. I believe in, OpenSSH. They have support for just, tunneling really simple through your internet through another server if you have SSH connection to it. But those options are all a little, sketchy. Tor, you've got IP addresses that are, you got the connections that are slow for sure, they're probably banned from whatever service you're using. So my best option, this is something I found out recently, is Amazon EC2. You can have a really cheap option where you pay 2 cents for an hour of computing, or basically you fire up an Amazon EC2, and that's like a virtualized operating system. And you go with a micro instance, so you can have Windows, whatever you want. And you fire that up, and here's the neat thing. Amazon has, they don't have time for when your EC2 instance is turned off to let you keep the IP address that you have. And I imagine this is because they only have so many addresses, so they can't afford to waste them on people who are just, not doing anything with them. So every time you restart your Amazon EC2 instance and fire it back up, you have a brand new public-facing IP. And not only is it a brand new IP address, you can choose the location of it in Amazon, and it's clean, probably. So there's some abuse with Amazon, but all the IP addresses they're not like Tor, where every IP you go to a website is banned or says you can't come here. Because Amazon's a legit service, right? A lot of people run their stuff on here, Netflix does. So that's the best option that I've seen for getting multiple IP addresses. It costs you almost nothing. So great solution all around. You have to obviously put payment information with them, and So here's just a quick screenshot of what these sock proxy lists look like. You can see you got just a list of IP addresses, a list of ports. So you can just plug that into iMacros and say connect, and then hopefully it won't error out. These things are still alive. They have to check them constantly because the server admins will be like, holy crap, people from China and all over the world are connecting to my server. I got to turn it off. So you're kind of like scattering to get the ones that are off. That's not a very good solution. So social network integration, I really hate this. Because if you're a company and you're going to throw your gateway online, you know what the best way to turn people away from your service is? It's to have Facebook like this page or follow us or whatever, because then immediately people think in their head, great, my friends are going to see that I like this, there might be some spam, I don't know how Facebook works, maybe I'm going to get posted on my wall or something weird like that, but yet a lot of people insist on doing this with like tweets or whatever. So how do we defeat this? It's not as clear cut, because obviously you're dealing with different social networks. Facebook does a lot of authorization. So what you would do here, unfortunately, again, we're going back into the spam black hat market, and they actually sell accounts in bulk for, guess what, spam, and things like tweets and like Facebook messages to all your friends, and I really dislike the market, but this is really the best solution. Let me show you guys on the next page here. This is just a general website, which is probably run by some Russian guy, I have no idea, and you can buy all these accounts relatively cheaply. Things like Facebook are expensive because they do a lot of authentication, and often you need a valid phone number, so they have to do who knows what with a valid phone thing. So that's an issue. Although Hotmail accounts are incredibly cheap. So you can pay $5 for 1,000 of them because Hotmail's a sketchy service. They probably don't do any verification, it's not for any anyways. So straightforward. I mean, AOLs are even cheaper because I don't think AOL cares about their emails anymore. So valid information. You gotta look legitimate because any competent system administrator will look at all these, and if the usernames are like general user 1, general user 2, general user 3, they're gonna be like, oh, that's not right, and just mass delete all your entries, and then you're screwed, and you just wasted all your time doing this. So you gotta have legitimate looking information. You can't beat this guy. It's just too obvious. So there's a site for this, and these guys are kind of like the de facto thing, because they make it incredibly easy. It's called fakenamegenerator.com, and the name sounds almost too trendy to be usable, but they're a legit site. And basically you have a page like this, where they give you a bunch of pseudo correct information. And what I mean by that is, the zip code will tie, for any real web application purposes, it'll tie with the address, and it'll all tie together, but they're not real. So none of this, there's no, who is it here, this guy living at this address, driving this car, it's just all fake. But they give you just about any kind of fake information you want. And here's the great thing though. Not only do they give you the information, like on a web page, they let you export and send to your email address with huge dumps of information. So say you have a thing you want to run with, and you're like, oh, I need 50,000 records I want them all female, and I want them to be, I don't know, from the UK. I want their names set to sound like they're all from the UK. You can do that, and they'll send you an SQL file, and it's an attachment, or excuse me, they'll send you an email, and then you can just download all these records that are custom tailored to what you want. So maybe you're doing a giveaway in the UK for who knows whatever reason, and you want all UK names because you can't think of a million UK names. You can just go here, get a CSV SQL database, and just start running with it. So it's super nice. And we'll pass verification on the server end for anything you need. So another option for sure is you can scrape real sources of information, like white pages, public records. I don't know what you'd be doing to do something like this, but I really recommend against it because it's fraud, and I'm sure the laws for technology are worse enough where you definitely don't want to be doing this. So fake name generator is usually enough. No need to fraud actual people's names. And this is something important. As I mentioned before, they rarely put security into thought when they're doing this. So when they throw up something, it's usually not well coded together, because why would it be? Why would you put 20 hours of work into a thing that's only going to be up for a week? So naturally they're only going to do a little bit of work, and they probably didn't cover SQL injection or et cetera, et cetera. They probably just, hey Jim, you finished that yet? Yeah, I got something, and they just throw it out, which is horrifying. And we're going to see an example later, which is guys who did it incredibly wrong. And there's a lot of them. So never forget the basics. So giveaways. We're going to do some, and this is probably why you are all here. I want free stuff. Free stuff is cool. I can get with that. So finding a giveaway, it's pretty straightforward. I don't think any of you guys had trouble with this. They have entire communities based off of this, like frugal communities, where it's like, where are the giveaways? I want free stuff. And they kind of collaborate on that, newspapers, magazines, whatever. But the important thing to outline is there at the bottom, companies that offer giveaway services. So there are, and I'm going to show you an example right here. You see Rafflecopter, which is a really poor internet joke, play on some meme, but they actually do a service for you where they say, hey, why would you even pay your workers to do a small bit of code or make a giveaway? Why not just use us? Pay us a little bit, and then we'll throw up a giveaway, and you can just embed it in your page, and you're good. That's a pretty convenient service, but there's an issue with that. So say this became popular, and it is pretty popular. I see this a lot in the web. They start doing, every site runs Rafflecopter's giveaway service. Now, if you build a script to abuse one giveaway, you've now made yourself in a position where any other giveaway you see that uses Rafflecopter, you already have a script for them. So you can get rolling immediately. So, like, I saw their website and I saw their whole stuff, and it is not very secure. Like, they don't do a whole lot of validation. It's pretty straightforward. So it'd be like akin to hacking a slot machine and then going to every casino in Vegas and cashing out. So I don't really like this idea, because it definitely, unless they do it securely, it's not really well done. Finding them is easy. I just do a Google search to like the past week, and I do stuff that I want. So I'm like, oh, again, sorry, you gotta catch me here. Sometimes I'll talk like I'm doing things. Of course, I'm being hypothetical here. So before we move on, I think a lot of people make the mistake of when they throw up a giveaway, they think in their head, it's only been for a week, nobody's going to take the time to think about writing a script, hacking us, doing etc. And they think, oh, it's safe, because it's only been out for a short time. Nobody's going to take the time, nobody's going to take the effort to do this, and I think a lot of companies have definitely made that mistake before. So I've got it down to a science where, and I recommend any of you guys do this too, like I talked about before, have scripts available. Have them ready to go. Like you have disposable mail services, just have a function. You just input like username and then just whatever, and then you can just get all the emails. And that way, whenever you go on something, you already have scripts for it. So it's like a disposable email, already have a script for that. Great. And I've actually taken it further. I don't even write WebBot code anymore. I have a script that generates it for me. So the important thing here is time matters. You know, you should have an RSS feed or something else so that you know when the giveaways are first happening. Because if you're the first guy on this, that's probably where they hadn't patched something or realized that they screwed up in the very beginning, which you often see companies like, oh crap, this is a bunch of fake entries, let's fix the code a little bit, let's get it working, and filter all these bad guys. So enough talk. I mean, I've gone over all these concepts, and I think you guys all get them. So let's see some real-world examples where we're actually putting these things to use in real-world situations. So I don't know if any of you guys have heard of tune-up utilities. They're kind of popular. It's like a Windows optimization software. They're obviously very trendy. You can see all the hexagons being technology. So this is just a simple form. You just need a first name, last name, email address. Probably the most basic thing you'll ever see. Just by looking at this, I know this was put together quick because you have things like Bootstrap, which just make things look pretty. And like they didn't put any real effort into this, which is great for us. And so plug in some fake information. Guten Tag, I did that because this is a German giveaway translated to English, so all the English is really bad, and this is the most German thing I can think of. So, great. Click. Says, we have received your request successful. So I assume the email's waiting for us in our box. And then again, we have to create an account. Just go here. There's an email. Looks like a link here. Good deal. Go to this link, and there's their serial number. And that's straightforward. And they probably are thinking everybody's going to use this. You know, it's easy enough. So I'm just going to basically monitor that request, and then I'll use my program to generate the code for me, but you would write the code by hand or use that macros to do something with this. And then, you know, more code, and basically it's really easy. There's no blocks. And this is what I'm trying to point out. These guys, this is a big company. They're giving out, I mean, they make a lot of money. So why would they not take, I mean, even if these codes, I didn't tell you these codes are like for a year, but even if they're only for a month, guess what? If you now have 10,000 of these codes, you're never paying for the software again. You're solid. And like, especially for web services, like I know GrrCON did a contest, and they were giving away 1 month codes. Guess who would never have to pay for GrrCON again? The guy that hacked their giveaway. And they had even less protection. But yeah, this is just me validating their crappy software and then later removing it because they... So keys for everybody. The point is, so what about actually hacking a giveaway? And we're going to see here just how easy it might be. Even those who don't have hacking experience could probably do something with this. So here's an example of some giveaways, some game that I really don't care about, but I was at the time interested in adding stuff to my talk. And I look here and I go, okay, same setup as before, emails, and it looks like they're trying to send you some spam at the bottom there, which is gross, but who cares? You just use a disposable email. Just sign up for that. Let's have to get a link here. Just click on that. Great, right? You have our key. But you know, this is a little different. Maybe these guys aren't as crappy as they look. Maybe they did like capture verification. You don't want to do the capture verification. You want to spend money. You don't want to do whatever. So maybe it's a little easier to get on their thing. Let's look at this URL a little closer. And it's surprising how often this happens. Because you would think that like even like the most incompetent programmer would think somebody might edit the URL or something. But let's just increment the number 460 to 461 here and see what happens. Oh, we get a brand new key. So that's great. So you're telling me you could just increment the number and then we get new keys constantly? Does it really work that way? It does. I mean, you have to be kidding me. And this is not the only time I've seen this either. These aren't edge cases. These are the cases. This is it. It's just a joke. And it's funny as you go further down, so we're not actually moving, when we're moving through keys, it goes from like a key number 1,000 something to key number 200. Something is right here. So let's increment it to 3, and then do a little CSI means in here. You get a warning, a publicly displayed SQL warning, which is bad practice again. So you're showing everybody your errors. I don't think I need to explain more where this might go. This guy's clearly incompetent with SQL, so that means he's probably not validating other things like SQL inputs, for example. So I won't explain where that probably would go, but I think you can get a good idea that this guy's a very incompetent web programmer. And you can basically have all these keys and share them with your friends if you care about the game. So these so far have just been too easy. Let's try something a little more complicated, something that maybe a major company has done. You've probably heard of this already, actually. Let me make sure one second here, I'm going to make sure my volume is actually up here. Yeah, let me just turn this up. So you guys have it. Ooh. That should work.
Hello, friends. The Papa John's Super Bowl 47 coin toss experience is here.
Hey, Jim, we're already giving away millions of free
Exactly, so why stop that?
You're right, mate. Both heads or tails. And if you call it right, you win a free pizza. Did you put it up, Chris?
We may text every now and then.
Vote now and order at PapaJohns.com, where any large pizza is only $11. That's any large, even specialties, just $11.
Better ingredients, better pizza. Papa John's.
Where did everyone in America lives?
That's a lot of free pizza.
That is a free pizza. Could you imagine having free pizza? Sounds like a good deal. So, just a little snippet from the FAQ. You don't have to read most of this, but basically the concept is you vote, you say, I think it's going to end up heads or tails, and if you vote correctly, you get a no strings attached coupon for one free pizza at Papa John's. So, form looks like this. This is just a little snippet of it. You choose one. But more importantly, you want to be sure how this thing is delivered. Why put effort if you can never actually pick up the codes? If they're going to, mail into your house, great. I don't have 10,000 houses to send codes to, unfortunately. So, but this is important. So this is another statement from their FAQ, and they basically state that, they'll deliver a promo code to you by email. Great. So now you're in a perfect position. You don't need a physical address. You just need emails. And man, we have unlimited emails to work with. So we can, hypothetically, of course, get a ton of free pizza. Great. So it's not as easy as it looks. And I think I would put these web programmers for Papa John's somewhere between incompetent and there's just some very weird things I'm pointing out here. So they use captchas. That's good. I think they read some tutorial that captchas are good. They use them. That's great. So that's good. We could solve that for very cheap. But so there's also IP banning after 4 submissions. What that means is they basically figured one of their guys told them that there's an average of 4 people that would enter per household. So they figured out to one IP address. So you can enter 4 times with one IP address before they say no more entries. So that's kind of an issue. They also, this is something I've never seen before. And this is what leads me to believe that they're just very weird programmers, or whoever the team is that made this is just very weird. So they do something where they ban all non-popular email addresses. So say your company was like test.com, and you had 3 employees that entered this, or maybe 4 employees. After those 4 employees entered, they ban the whole domain. That's their solution. They just say, oh, well, only 4 people per domain can register, except large ones. And by large, I mean Hotmail, I mean Gmail, I mean the popular ones. So, I guess this is what they were trying to do, but that's it. I don't know why they would do that. So, I guess that was their solution. And then, of course, additional votes determined me for the same entry will be disqualified. That's from their legal crap that I had very much fun reading, hypothetically. So, they also have 2 submissions for 1 pizza. So basically that factors out to you have 4 submissions per IP. That means 2 free pizzas per IP address. So here's why we're lucky. The guys at Papa John's were smart enough to do things like, captchas, whatever else, but they definitely were smart enough to do things like region blocking. So a Swedish IP for an American contest, totally legit. We didn't verify any of that because that sounds complicated. 4 submissions, we already went over this math. There's no email blocks, I already went over that, so we're not really that lucky. So basically we're at a point where it sounds a little complicated, but probably doable. And if hypothetically you were to want to get unlimited free pizza, and you were to want to abuse a contest like this, and something hypothetically like that would happen, this is how it would look. You would pay whatever it is per captcha to solve them. You would go to your spammer friend and say, hey, I need 1,000 Hotmail accounts. He would barely understand what you're saying, but then you would pay him that amount of money, get the 1,000 Hotmail accounts. Fake name generator, info is free. In the description, put them all together. Again, it's whatever your time is worth. All free. And just to point this out, we're just going to do an example of the 1,000 accounts. This is less than one pizza, one $11 pizza. So you can do all this very, very cheaply. So here's hypothetically what a hacked together application would look like. So when you would swap through, heads, tails, whatever. And hypothetically, if we were to do this, it would probably use Tor, because at the time you might not know about Amazon EC2 and how freaking great that is. So Tor is a solid option at this point. So great, fake info, fake whatever, it should work. And we'll say in this hypothetical situation, it did work. Nobody at Papa John's, surprise, figured this out. So great, they've gone to this point where they did the Super Bowl, and they flipped the coin, and half your entries are good. And the only issue here now is that you have all these codes sitting in a bunch of email addresses. Now you need to harvest them from their little box that they're sitting in on Hotmail, which is what we're using in this example. So that sounds complicated, right? Like, you have to harvest these from Hotmail. You know, Hotmail will definitely block that, right? Like, you can't just, from one IP address, check 1,000 Hotmail accounts' emails. That doesn't work. Oh, wait, it does, because they have no blocking of that sort. So you could, you know, use 1,000 Hotmail accounts to sign up for it, and then just go pop and just download all the emails from everything. They won't block you. I mean, it's just, Hotmail's always been a sketchy service. I mean, these are the same guys that let their hotmail.co.uk domain expire and had some random guy buy it for them to put it back up so we can get his dang emails back. You should read that story. That's Microsoft in a nutshell. So, great. That was pretty straightforward. And hypothetically now, you have, with just a little bit of scripting and like downloading all these emails, you probably use Thunderbird. I'm sure there's some weird plugin that you can do to check all these accounts. And it took no skill, maybe a little bit of regular expression just to parse these codes out of these emails. And you're there. You know how pizzas that you could just walk into any Papa John's and say, hey, I need 200 free pizzas. And if they didn't look at you very strange, they'd have to give them to you because they are real codes. So that's great. More free pizza than you could ever eat or want to eat because Papa John's kind of gross. Thanks. Great. So we've already kind of gone over this. I've kind of implied this throughout the whole talk. Why are these giveaways so vulnerable? You have a company that's Papa John's. These aren't some small guys. These aren't some like a web startup that's new to things. This is Papa John's. I mean, they've got more money than they know what to do with. So these guys, if they don't have it right, who does? You know. So I think the issue is, I mean, these guys definitely thought about it. If they're banning some email, you know, domains, they definitely thought about it at some point. But I don't think they really cared that much. They're really security conscious for sure. So we'll move on. We'll go to contests and polls now, and we're going to show some examples. It's basically the same issue. You don't have any physical verification, so it's all digital, and you can spoof and use all the techniques we found before to rake polls basically the same way. Great. So I'm going to show you a historical example that I think some of you might have heard of. But I'm going to show this to you, and this is a popular example of vote rigging that happened historically.
So we're here with Moot, founder of 4chan.org, and so you kind of famously hacked the ton.com site and made yourself a winner of the online poll. Are you going to hack this event too?
No plans for that. Not yet, at least.
That sounded really sinister.
So that's Moot, and he's kind of he's a very weird case. He started an image board called 4chan, which I'm sure most people have heard about, kind of the gross part of the web. So he was Time's most influential person at one point. And do you think this guy, I mean, he's not Obama, he's not Oprah, and yet he won the most influential person? Does that sound legit? Because it definitely isn't. So what happened here is you had an entire community working together, and these guys aren't technical, like these are elite hackers who are all like super smart. This is a bunch of guys who just decided, you know what would be really funny? Is if this random board leader that, you know, created our thing would be the head of like Time's most influential person. Let's screw with them. So they ended up doing this, and I think this is the greatest indicator of anything, that these guys had a lot of control over the polls. Because when you're at the point where you can rig a poll so well that you can spell out with the first name of every entry a secret message, like that's a joke. Like the Times people must have been like scratching their heads. I'm sure they didn't figure this out if they'd let this happen. So, but yeah, so that's basically what happened. You just had a community that got together, and they didn't do this because, you know, they had some political statement. These guys aren't like a Syrian army. They're not big guys. It's just a community that wants to have fun, and they just decided to do this together. And maybe some of them are technical, but I guarantee you most of these guys don't really know how to use a computer that well. And they did it. And here's how they did it. In the beginning, it was a little bit too easy. You had something called a cross-site request forgery vulnerability, which is a fancy technical word, meaning that basically this is how you vote. You visit this URL, and that votes. You have a little ID there for the contestant, and then you have like a rating equals 1. So great. What people did, very straightforward, they're like, oh, so I'll just embed this in my web page, and then when people visit my website, it votes for him. And that's how that worked. They spread this all over the web. There was auto voting programs, you know, distributed among the community. One guy made it, you know, and posted it. And everybody else kind of got on board with it. So, I mean, that was a glaring vulnerability. And on top of that, it got even worse. So not only did these guys screw this up, they also didn't, like that rating thing at the end there, that wasn't checked either. So they could put really freaking large values in there, and so that it wasn't checked at all. So at one point, Lou was throwing a rating of 300%, which is obviously impossible. And I think this is probably the point where the people at the Times office were like, "Oh, that's not right. Something definitely went wrong there." And they probably get yelled at by whoever their management was, because that looked bad. So then they ended up responding by, of course, "We'll just roll back the whole site to a previous time, and then it'll be fine, and we'll fix some stuff, and it's fine." So they ended up rolling it back. And at one point you had like the community figuring this out, and they're just like, "Oh, what the heck? Our votes, they're all messed up." And like they were editing their database to kill off all these bad votes, and they just ended up, screw it, we should revert. It's the only way at this point. So they patched it. And they patched it pretty well. They did an MD5 hash, and they made it so you couldn't just link to or embed it in your webpage and vote, because that's horrifying. So they did it relatively well. But there's still some issues. So there were new rate limits where you couldn't just vote for a person over and over and over again, like every second. Now, if you vote for moot, you have to wait 13 seconds before you vote for moot again, otherwise they'll IP ban you. But the issue with that is within those 13 seconds, you can vote for other people just fine. So I can vote for, Oprah, Obama in that time as well, and vote them up, which is perfectly fine. Then you just have to wait 13 seconds again for those individuals. So what that created was a very easy way to break the whole freaking thing around a message board, which you saw earlier. So this was good. I mean, they did it, but it was secure, and there wasn't like a security vulnerability, but they just adapted the voting programs, and they just, did what we saw earlier by bypassing all these. They just wrote an application, which we're going to see up here. This screenshot alone amazed me, because this is some guy who is smart. I mean, you can tell this is a very complicated program put together just for this poll. And you have to imagine, does this guy have a job? He should, because this is great. He's got like a freaking graph showing like the vote rate and like winners and contestants. He's got like word lists and like stock proxy support. It's like, I don't know what the heck happened to this. Some guy who definitely was lead just decided that this would be funny and he's going to dedicate a whole night to this or something. So, and remember, like going past all this isn't like a political statement. This isn't some big deal. This isn't like, has some strong weight. This is just some funny thing that a community got together and decided, what we're going to do today? We're going to do something funny. We're a great Times poll, and it just worked. And obviously, as you saw, it did. He actually went to the Times thinking he was the most important person, and all the other guys are probably wondering too, was my vote legit? Why am I here? I was probably just raised to put this massive leaderboard thing. Like I don't feel special. If they understood what was going on at all, which maybe they didn't. I don't know. So the point here is, it doesn't take a security vulnerability. It doesn't take, some guys screwing something up where you can SQL inject their database, do something crazy to rig it. Sometimes, they just don't put enough defense up in the form of captchas or whatever. That's really the point I'm trying to push across here, is that it doesn't take a vulnerability. It doesn't take them screwing up something. Sometimes it just takes, sometimes their defenses just aren't enough. And so outside of that, I kind of got to thinking, what other online polls exist, and are they actually important? Because I think a lot of people, they think, okay, online polls, that's what? What does that mean? I mean, it might mean something like O'Reilly factor, who cares what the poll is? So there's a lot of communities and a lot of companies that polls are very important, and one of these is Steam for sure. They base what games are going to put on sale by who votes for it the most. This is clever for them because they think, okay, well, if they want, this game, all the guys are going to vote for it, and of course all the guys that voted for it are going to go right around tomorrow and purchase it. So this is like a trendy thing that they do. And their profit model is based off of this. This is real money. This is a lot of money. Steam's a big company. Stuff that doesn't matter. The O'Reilly factor, just these polls get rated all the time. It's like a joke now. It's an ongoing joke among 4chan to just rate these polls. So that's not that important. ESPN, they have polls too. Who cares? Again, US.gov, even less important because they just ignore them. I don't even know why they have this up. Makes me feel better as a citizen, I guess. So here's something that I think is actually important, because you see a lot of under Fox News articles and a bunch of other news articles. You see these things where you have comments like this, and you see you have these upvote, downvote things. They display the top comment by whatever has the most upvotes or whatever. So the comments that everybody agree with, of course, gets put up to the top. And I kind of believe that a lot of people's opinions on politics and other things aren't really that strong rooted. I think a lot of people, they see these things and they go, oh, Is that the general consensus? Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah, that's probably what I believe too. So you could really control public opinion in a very real way. And there's entire communities that are completely centered around the idea that good content will be voted up by the community. So Reddit is definitely one of them. They are in a constant battle, trying to avoid, vote rigging. They try to kill off bots. They're definitely a complicated situation where they try to make sure that no spammers are trying to flood the front page. One of the people that fell victim to this, and this is one of the reasons why Dig lost all of their users at one point, they all kind of were like, man, what the heck, Dig? They changed their algorithm at one point to stop spam, or they said it was new and improved. It was like the 2.0 Dig. You guys are gonna love this. And of course it didn't work. Spam was all over the front page. Bots were destroying them. And the community is like, please bring us back the old algorithm. Like, this new one is terrible. And they basically said, no, you're gonna like this new algorithm. You're gonna live with it. And they're like, okay, let's go to Reddit. And now Dig is very small users compared to Reddit, and Reddit took over. So I was one of those guys who's like, oh, yeah, no, fine, I'll just use Reddit. It's basically the same, just uglier. So Facebook, same idea. A lot of companies I know for a fact will actually buy likes for their page just so that they can appear bigger on the internet. And I think it's a big factor because when you use a company, you want to be like, okay, are these guys legit, or are they just some small company that might go away and I'll lose my money with them? So a lot of companies start up these things to show social media preference, but that's all determined on how many likes you have, how big are you, how many people are, with your stuff, and like, is this a popular thing for you to join? Amazon. I know for a fact that I can't imagine any of you guys have not used Amazon before or tried to order anything. It's great. And when I go to an Amazon product, the first thing I look for is what's the rating. Because if it's like 3 stars, if it's 2 stars, if it's 1 star, I know the company's shipping a crap product and I'm not going to buy from them. Because the community really, these are the guys who look at it and are like, this is good quality. You can trust the user. And I think that's really why they do the whole rating system, is because they can get a feel for how this company looks like. And this happens quite a bit. They have a lot of vote rigging, where like a product would be like really, like, oh, that doesn't sound like it's from the company, and all the comments like saying, this is the greatest product ever. It's clear they just paid for them. So it happens actively for sure. Yelp. I know for a fact, a lot of people use this. I've heard some bad stories about them, forcing people to pay money to, have good reviews and stuff like that. But I'm sure also that any of you guys, when you go out to see a movie, what's the first thing you would do? I can tell you what I do. I go straight to Rotten Tomatoes. I go straight to whatever these sites are, and I think, I don't care about what the critic review is, because the critic review is almost always crap. They're like, oh, it didn't accentuate my current view of popular media. It was like, who cares? I want to see a funny movie. I want something to be blown up. And the audience rating is what I look for. And I'm pretty sure they don't do any protection. So imagine a big movie comes out, or imagine a small movie comes out, and then everybody goes to these sites like Rotten Tomatoes and other review sites, and the ratings are great, or the ratings are terrible. You could directly impact, as one guy, the sales of a movie if everybody's using the site. And not only do I think that this works, it probably happens. I have to imagine. It seems too easy that nobody would have done this before. So it's definitely something to think about. At one point, I remember vaguely, I looked this up, Mitt Romney ended up, again, to make him look like he was a popular candidate, he bought a lot of Twitter followers, because he's got all the money in the world. You know what's a good investment? Is if people are looking at you on Twitter and you got a ton of followers, you look more popular. That's a strong thing you want to do. You're like, oh, I'm the biggest candidate, I'm gonna win for sure. So he actually ended up buying and got in trouble for buying a lot of Twitter followers that were very unlegit. So they had no tweets. It was like a static image that looked like it was pulled off somebody's Facebook. Very creepy, so he got busted with that. So my point is, not only are things like, vote rigging important, I think that they actually do happen. And I think it's amazing that a person sitting at home could rig a poll that would directly influence, a bunch of very real money. So how do we prevent this? This is an important step. It sounds like we're screwed now. How can we prevent somebody from, abusing our contest, abusing our poll, whatever? And I think it's the same old balance we've heard forever. It's security, convenience. If we add too much security off of the convenience, it's just a pain in the butt. So you got to have that good balance. It's a very case-specific thing. So if you're going to do, a giveaway that, not a whole lot of people are going to use, then maybe you don't have to have as much security. You can just have something simple. So there are methods with inconvenience, and those methods are Facebook, Google login. I personally hate these a lot, but they are a strong deterrent. Because Facebook, you basically shift all of your burden onto Facebook and Google to verify these things for you, and they've been doing this for a while. So it's a good, it definitely works, it's just, it turns away your users quite a bit. reCAPTCHA, again, is another solid, rock that people have been using forever to try to evade bots and stop them from using their web service. And forcing the use of popular email addresses is definitely something I guess that would work if you are Papa John's, but again, I don't like that either. So, you can do that if you want to. Methods without inconvenience, and these are ones that I think should be implemented in every poll regardless of what you're doing. IP address blocking and region blocking. This is something that I never see happening in actual polls, but should be happening. The giveaways and other stuff, they won't do, like, if it's just a US giveaway, why do you need Chinese, IP space to come to your site? What, you think somebody has a Chinese proxy and they're going to be inconvenienced by this? I don't think so. I hope not, unless that's your traffic, which did. But you really could just take it, it's not that hard to implement. Just block countries that aren't for your giveaway and you're solid. And then, on top of that, I've seen a lot of people do this, don't let them use the same email address for this, a lot of people I've seen, you can just type in the email address again and send, but it just keeps resetting you the code. And that's like as brain dead as it gets. Like they didn't put any work into this. And I think a lot of people, it's a strong deterrent, is if you get just a list of all these spam, mailing sites, like MailCache or whatever, you just block them all and don't let them use them. I think that's a strong deterrent for sure. Because I think a lot of people, when they're looking at the giveaways, they have this mentality like, is this really worth my effort? Oh, well, they block all this, so I'm going to write more code for this? I don't want to do it. So they'll actually stop it. And of course, this is the most important thing of all, keep logs. Because if you want to be a common sysadmin, you want to know what's happening. Make sure you have logs and you're watching everybody to make sure that they're not, stealing hundreds of thousands of your codes that might sell on eBay later, whoever knows what. Make sure that you're watching, because it's very easy to see like a bunch of fake entries for people who do it poorly, and you can just mass delete them. And they've done all this effort and all this resources to try to abuse your thing. And you can just take it away in like one query, or just drop all their entries. So that's important. It should always be done. So some final thoughts. It's really very situation specific. If you have a thing where you really need people to back off your service, you can go the extra level. You can have Facebook authentication. You can even have SMS, they send you a text message and a verification code. That's something that's very hard to get past. It'll definitely inconvenience. But if your service, the thing that you're offering, is like big value, and you don't want to get rid of a lot of them, that is what you should do. It depends on the situation. If it's light, go light. If it's heavy, put a lot of protection on. So, and finally, sometimes the best things in life are actually free. So, that's all. I appreciate you all coming. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask? Anything, maybe specific? Yes? Okay, so the question was, if I had 5,000 Hotmail accounts, and I used them for a contest, would I just scrap them afterwards, or would I reuse them for other contests? And I think that there's really no reason that you couldn't reuse the Hotmail addresses. Unless you're doing it with the same company, you probably shouldn't be using the same emails every time, because they might start to catch on after a little bit, at least they're coming from. But no, the Hotmail addresses are probably good forever. You can just reuse those for, whatever you're doing. So no problem with that. And again, incredibly cheap, Russian spammers. They need to make money too. This is how they do it. They'll sell you 1,000 Hotmail accounts for $5 because that's good money for them. Any other questions? Yes?
Is the iMacros scriptable, and does it record and then spit out script code?
Good question. So he asks, is the iMacros plugin scriptable, or does it just like record and play? So basically what it is it's kind of scriptable. You have like a list of actions, almost like if any of you have ever done like, batch scripting. It basically has command, command, command. You can do like a loop. And that's basically where they cut you off. So if you want to do advanced scripting, you have to actually pay them money, just a crazy amount of money to do any automation with that. So they charge you a premium of like hundreds of dollars to buy their software. Then you can do Visual Basic or PHP or Python and integrate it with that. But here's the thing, if you know JavaScript, you're actually pretty solid, because with JavaScript, you can actually do like manipulation real-time stuff. They have support for JavaScript scripting without paying. So I would definitely recommend if you know JavaScript, you can do that. Most things, honestly, if it's just a giveaway or it's just a poll, you won't need to do any scripting. Because they have loop variables built in, you can do those. You can like even read from comma separated like files, and then just like read row per loop, and then fill in information that way. You can rotate proxies based on loops. Not too complicated. So most stuff you wouldn't need scripting. If you're getting something more advanced, yes, scripting is definitely an option. Again, I'd like to mention Watier is free. It's just not as polished. So you can't do the recording of Watier, I don't believe. You have to do like actual Ruby hooks and like programming. So if you're afraid of programming, Macros is a great option. If you want to do it free, Watier is a great option as well. So it depends on your situation, of course. But any other questions? No? Okie dokie. I appreciate you all coming. You have a nice day.